So one of the right-wing attacks against the Washington Post and the women who have come out against Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore is that the women are all liars, that the liberal media is going in and trying to convince women to knowingly falsely accuse Roy Moore of sexual assault and sexual harassment. That's why you saw the robocall of Bernie Bernstein, Washington Post reporter, offering money for people to accuse him, which of course was not true. And now we find out about another attempt because the Washington Post had an amazing story today about their run-in with a woman named Jamie Phillips. That is apparently her real name. She went under a pseudonym at first when she approached a Washington Post reporter and said that she had information about a relationship she had had back when she was 15 with Roy Moore and wanted to provide more information. So it's a long process of them going back and forth with her and her stringing the reporter along. She wants to use email and not use the phone. She apparently was scared of actually talking to them. But eventually, the Washington Post reporters on Monday morning saw her walking into the New York offices of Project Veritas, a group that has no interest in Veritas or anything like it. Now this, of course, is the organization that D-bag who likes to go undercover to try to get recordings or tapings that he can selectively edit to make liberal groups look bad, had put this woman up to trying to lie to the Washington Post about her experiences, about being impregnated by Roy Moore and having an abortion. Now, because they found out that she is apparently involved with Project Veritas and had been lying to them, they said this: we always honor off-the-record agreements when they're entered into in good faith, referring to the conversations they'd previously had with Jamie Phillips. But this so-called off-the-record conversation was the essence of a scheme to deceive and embarrass us. The intent by Project Veritas clearly was to publicize the conversation if we fell for the trap. Because of our customary journalistic rigor, we weren't fooled, and we can't honor an off-the-record agreement that was solicited in maliciously bad faith. The problem that the mistake that she made is that she acted incredibly suspiciously in her talks with the Washington Post, continually asking them if once her story came out, that would destroy Roy Moore's chances of winning the race. Of course, she did that because she thought it would look bad for them on tape. They refused to say anything like that whatsoever. And they also made clear to her that they would be fact-checking her story, which they did. And they found out that there was no evidence she could provide that any of the things she talked about had actually happened. And further, they found references online to a GoFundMe campaign under the same name as Jamie Phillips saying this: "I'm moving to New York. I've accepted a job to work in the conservative media movement to combat the lies and deceit of the liberal MSM. I'll be using my skills as a researcher and fact checker to help our movement."
Yeah, fact
checker. Unfortunately, she found out what actual fact checking is like, and her lies and deceit came back to bite her on the ass. Now, they asked her at one of their meetings in person about this posting and whether she had been involved with some sort of organization which was attempting to put one over on the Washington Post. And she said no, she had applied to work with the Daily Caller. And they asked her, so that they could fact check it, "Who did you talk to?" She said, "Kathy," pausing before adding the last name Johnson. You'll be shocked to find out that Kathy Johnson doesn't work at the Daily Caller, and there's no reference. They talked to the Daily Caller. They have no information about this woman ever having applied. And interestingly, later that night at 7 p.m., the message on the GoFundMe page was gone, replaced by a new one. "Campaign is complete and no longer active."
If you're trying to say, no, that wasn't my GoFundMe page to do a hatchet job on the media like you guys, once they ask you about it, taking it off in a panic is probably not the right way to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so but this story is wonderful for the exact opposite reason that they intended. They wanted to show, oh, you see how biased the media is, and they don't do their job, and all they do is lie. I just came in and told them that I got an abortion from Roy Moore, and I had sex with him when I was underage, etc. And they just wrote it down, except they didn't. They said, no, wait a minute, we need documentation, we need corroboration, we need further witnesses. And she tried to trick them by doing things like, oh, I guess I'm gonna have to take it to a rival paper, I can't trust you guys, right? They're like, okay.
Because their journalistic ethics were more important in that case than getting the scoop.
Right, and then they're like, look, if you want us to publish this stuff about Roy Moore, we have to make sure that it's true. So can you help us figure out how it's true? And then she would start to give answers that were totally inconsistent. They're like, wait a minute, not only are we not publishing it, we're gonna look into you because you're because remember, from what they know in the beginning, and for most of this is a person trying to do damage to Roy Moore, who keeps asking over and over to the reporters, can you make sure he loses? The reporter's like, how would I know if he's gonna lose or not lose? That's not my job. My job is to make sure your story is true, and then if it is, print it. But then she gave such inconsistent answers to their barrage of fact checking that they're like, wait a minute, I don't think she's even real. And then that's when they unwind the fact that her name is matched to the GoFundMe page and is a conservative hack and works. And then they go and find her walking into Project Veritas. These guys are real criminal masterminds. Right?
How are they not better at this by now?
Right. The Washington Post confronts her. She's like, that is ridiculous. I don't work for Project Veritas. Walks into Project Veritas and deletes her GoFundMe page.
And then she says to them, I think they're on to me after accidentally butt dialing the Washington Post.
That part she didn't do, but it could have. Anyway, so thank you for proving our point that the mainstream media does not make things up. Even when handed on a silver platter, they don't make it up. Now, if you said that some of those guys have bias, not only is that believable, I would join you. You're probably not in the way that you expect, but I think that a lot of the writers, the editors, certainly the publishers, the owners, etc., bring their own set of assumptions to stories, and they don't quite recognize that. That is why they will have a reflexive reaction against anyone who is, in my opinion, not part of the establishment. Whether it's a right-winger or Tea Party group or whatever, or a left-wing challenger to the establishment like Bernie Sanders. Reflexively, the Washington Post, in my opinion, will go, wait a minute, the Bernie Sanders stuff sounds unrealistic, and they'll put color into it in a way that I think they don't even realize they're doing. But does the Washington Post get in a room and go, all right, let's try to figure out a way to destroy Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump? Okay, John, you make up this story. Susie, you go pretend that these quotes are real, and you accuse some random person of molestation, right?
I'm booting up the fake newsotron now.
Yeah. No, that's not how it works. They don't make up stuff like that. And thank you for proving that almost beyond a shadow of a doubt. Now, if you were to make a subtle and an effective argument against the mainstream media, you would talk about the implicit biases. But that's not what Project Veritas is in the business of doing. They're in the business of doing hatchet jobs. And they have been
100% deceptive hatchet jobs, because they're not just making someone look bad, they're deceptively editing material to try to make them look bad.
Yes, and now they've done this on several occasions. And the reason they keep doing it is because right-wing organizations fund them to lie. And then Republicans will take their work and use those lies in an effort to destroy organizations they don't agree with politically. Whether it's Planned Parenthood, and again in that case, 9 different state investigations, including Republicans, including in Texas, saying Planned Parenthood didn't do anything wrong. It was actually the people who did the tapes that did something wrong, okay? And then Acorn, deceptively edited, complete lies about how they walked in a pimp outfit, which they shot at another time. But what happened? The Republicans then defunded Acorn, which served poor people. Good, they crushed poor people with their lies and deception, and they're still around and still rewarded with grant after grant from Republican donors who think, I want to crush poor people. I want to crush the media who are giving you facts. I don't want them to give you facts. I want my propaganda in their place. That's why Project Veritas exists, for anyone to give them if you see anyone giving Project Veritas a shred of credibility, know that they are purposeful liars. If you like the Young Turks, you'll love Young Turks membership, tytnetwork.com/join.